Hello there, folks. Today we're going to take a look at the game called Tabannusi, Builders of Ur, or Ur. I don't know how to pronounce that. This is about Builders of Ur. It's a game from a T line of series from Board and Dice, and the designers are Daniele Tascini and David Spada. So yeah, let's dive into the game. Let's see how it works generally. So as you can see, this is another game in a T line, a heavier Euro game, or mid to heavy. It's in the same line with Teotihuacan and Tabannusi and Tolkien, the T games from NSCAN games and Board and Dice, basically, with a lot of iconography, as you can see here. But once you get through this for the first time, it's, I would say, rather clean, or somewhat clean. So I don't have much bad to say about iconography. But in this game, you're going to be moving around with your architect and your follower, whoever the worker, and then you're going to build those various buildings and gardens and water spaces around them to score points. You're going to score points in a ziggurat. You're going to go to the port to claim some special abilities, score points. You will also be able to, you will have these cards right here. These are the objectives that you're gonna claim at the end of the game. You will get one card, and then if you build certain number of houses or something else, or a garden space or whatever on those certain districts, then you gain extra points. Also during the game, on the right side in the corner, you can see those, but I'm gonna show you them here. You can see the cards over here. These are the objective cards as well, which you can claim during the game. So, for example, you have claimed the ship abilities, 2 of each color, and you have claimed at least 1 garden tile, or these are 8 garden tiles, or you have 3 houses on the white, 3 houses on the brown, or it's buildings, let's say. So, and there's many of them, and you get the points, and you get some extra maybe bonuses moving on the track, or getting extra influence tokens, or getting to put influence on the ships to gain special abilities. There's a lot of that. But the whole premise of the game, and this is an illustrative setup of the game. I'm not gonna it's not an accurate setup of the game, but it's kind of like a 2-player setup here. And I'm not gonna explain you every rule, but the main concept of the game is that you have your follower, you have your worker, and then you're gonna move around the board, and you have various districts. So you have districts over here with a number 1, number 2, number 3. Those 3 districts, they are kind of the same, except one of the actions is being randomized in the setup, and it's different. And then you have the port right here, which will grant some points, which will grant the resource crates and special abilities, and then the ziggurat, which will also grant some bonuses, but mostly for the scoring of different kinds of things that you build during the game. And the game works in a simplest way. So first of all, you have your architect, and you have to move your architect somewhere. And you have those dice right here. So those dice, they're also like 1 to 6-sided dice, and they represent those different districts. Yeah, you can see the districts are from number 1 to number 5. A 6 is kind of wild, but a restricted wild. So first of all, what you're gonna do, you're gonna choose 1 die. That's a number where you wanna go next turn. So if I choose a number 3, I will move my architect to a 3rd district, or district number 3. That means that next turn I'm gonna do stuff there. But at the beginning of turn, where 2 of my people are, that's where I'm gonna do the actions. So you first move the architect, then you take a die. So the dice right here, those numbers, they matter only during this step. Then you will claim that die, and then you will get it into your supply. I'm going to show you, this is a big board, so I'm going to show you this. This is a personal board. And then you're going to claim this die and just put it somewhere next to your supply. this becomes a resource. Now this is a yellow resource. The value of the die doesn't matter at all. So you've got all of that. And I'm going to show you about the player board a bit later. And now you can do the actions. And you can always do up to 2 actions in each district. And some of these are randomized. And some of these are the main actions. And the whole premise of the game is that you want to score the most points. So the easiest thing is to start building those projectiles and then making them into buildings eventually and marking them as your building. And then maybe building some water spaces and then building the garden tiles on those water spaces. So the whole thing about the projectiles is that if you build a projectile somewhere, and you can see all those spaces that have different icons, these are different bonuses. You get influence markers. You need influence markers to put them on projectiles so that you know that it's yours. And you need to put them on the special buildings, the ships, basically, to claim. You need to put them on the garden tiles to claim them as well. So you will need those. You will have a bunch of them at the beginning of the game. Some of them will be in the reserve, and you can basically get those influence markers later on in the game as bonuses. You can move up the tracks, and the tracks, they will basically score you points during the scoring round. And moving up the tracks will give you some bonuses, but it will basically determine the multiplier of how many points you get during the scoring of the buildings of those 3 basic districts. And those districts are separated by those water spaces and garden space right here. But these are 3 different districts. So if you are in the District 2, you can only do actions in District 2. So they're all the same. The main 3 actions are all the same. So you can build those projectiles, and the few main rules is that if there is a projectile of that color, if you want to build another projectile, of color white, then you have to build it next to this tile, and you can never have more than 3 projectiles in the same next to each other. Now you can never also start another project of the same color while there's a ongoing project of that color. You can start a different color project if you want to. That's allowed. And the other thing that you can do, you can build the building. When you build a building, you will basically pay some resources, and each space has a fixed amount of resources you need to pay. It's 2 brown, 2 yellow, and 2 white resources that need to pay to build the buildings, plus for every of your projectiles. And that means that if another player has come here and they have built a projectile over here, they will get a kind of like a bonus. If you build this building, they will just get a small bonus moving up the track, etc. But yeah, so you will pay extra for these 2. So for example, right here, I have to pay 2 resources. And as you remember, I told you that when you take a die, it becomes a resource. So you will be going around, you'll be taking those dice, you'll be collecting those dice. There are other means how you can pay for these costs. I'm going to tell you in a moment. But you're going to pay 2 yellow, for example, here, and 2 white resources, a total of 4 resources in order to build a building. And as I showed you, when you build a building, you will replace those with those building tiles, and you will mark it down with one of your houses. You don't have to put houses in everyone. It's just to mark down that this whole thing is your building. This kind of becomes, so this project becomes one big building, and you can always build buildings which are just one projectile. And when you do that, you always take the buildings from an appropriate row on your personal board, and then you will get some bonuses if you clean those rows and columns, etc. And these are extra houses that you can build when you go to Harbor or Ziggurat, etc. But first you always need to get to those buildings first, or houses. So that's the whole premise of the game. You are going to build those houses and buildings and projectiles, and you will also be able to for example, this action right here, you'll be able to buy with either the blue or a green resource. You will be able to buy the greenery or the garden or the water tiles. And when you take those, when you place them down, so the water tiles, you can always build as many as you want, but they have to start from the space that is next to another water space. So for example, I could build something like that if I have 3 of those tiles in my reserve. And the garden tiles, you can only build up to 3 of them in one go, and you have to build them on top of those water tiles. And if you cover some bonuses with the water tiles, you get those water tiles. So that's a good thing. Now, as I said, all of those districts, they have the same thing going on. You will also be able to claim those gardens, or you have to claim those gardens. You have to put those tokens right here. So why it's important? Why do you need to build the garden tiles next to buildings? So basically, the garden tiles are an extension of the building. So if a garden tile is next to a building, it becomes a part of that building. So during the scoring, this is not a 3-size building. Now it's a 5-size building, which means it's a higher multiplier. So you can build all of that and get a lot of points. Now, as I told you, you can do up to 2 actions on one spot. And that means you can do the same action twice or do different actions. So the different actions right here, you can get a special tile that you're going to build. And if you build a garden on top of that tile, you will get a bonus. It's a lot of like, you can basically reactivate your resource, or you can go up the track. And as I told you, the tracks are multipliers, all sorts of resources. You can get a resource from the boat, or you can get a gold. The gold is a cool thing. The gold is a wild resource. You can use gold in order to for example, if you take a die and let's say you wanted to move to a 3, there is no 3 right here. You pay gold instead, take any die, pay gold instead, so you can move anywhere. And or you don't have enough resources. Gold is a wild resource. You can pay with gold as well. So all this stuff going on here. There's a 6 over here, so there's no district 6. But if you take a 6, that means that you can go anywhere that is not represented by those dice. So for example, if there would be a 4 and 5 and a 6, if I take a 6, I can go to a district 3, 2, or 1 instead. So you do 2 of your actions and you move your meeple to your architect, and there's that another player's turn. So in the harbor, when you do the harbor action, you will be able to put the tokens right over here and there and so on. And these are some special abilities. They will be able to give you some extra opportunities. For example, here, if you build a house, you can do that extra buying the water tiles, buying the garden tiles action, or you build the garden tiles, you can get points. Or if you take a resource, you can basically give away a resource to reactivate 2 of your crates. And what is a crate? Crate, basically, you can also claim those crates by building the houses with the blue resources on those spaces. Some of these spaces are one-time use bonuses. For example, when you go to the track, getting influence and getting a resource, or you can build them on top of those crates. And when you get those crates, you will take those crates and they will become resources in your personal supply. And when you use those resources, you just put them face down. You can always, as a free action, refresh those. And how you refresh them, if you have any resource, any die, you can just give this die away to refresh 1 crate per this. And this is once per turn per each crate. So you collect those crates, you collect those special abilities, you move up the tracks, and when you score the size of the building with the garden tiles, of course, if there are any, multiplied by the number right here, depending on where is your token over there. So you get those points there. In a ziggurat, when you do the actions in ziggurat, you can see here with the green resource, and there are some extra things like to get gold, you get to refresh your crates. This is bonus actions. But the main action here is that you can build houses right there. When you build a house right there, you will get some bonuses. But the thing is, you will be able to put the influence markers. And let me just, where's my influence markers? I only have a few right now here. You put the influence markers on those tiles right here. And during scoring, you will score the rightmost influence marker right here. And for example, here it's based on how many houses you have in the harbor built and how many houses you have in a ziggurat build, or how many ships you have claimed, and you multiply it by that. So if the token is right here, so it's 3 times and a half, let's say 3 houses in a harbor, I get 9 points. And let's return to the main thing. So this whole shenanigan lasts for 5 rounds. There will be a final scoring of each district. But how does the district start scoring? So it doesn't score every round. You will play until a district becomes empty. Once one of the districts becomes empty, you will score that thing. So with districts 1, 2, and 3, you will score those houses things. If it's a district number 4, a harbor, you will score harbor in a way that you will look at houses plus your tokens. So if I have a house right here and a token, I score 1 point for this token, 1 point for this token. If I would have a house right here as well, 1 point for this, 1 point for that as well. So I get more, the more houses you have, the more points I have. And with ziggurat, I just told you how you score the points. So this is the whole basic premise of the game. There are some nuances over there. I don't want to dive too deep into this game, but it's a rather straightforward experience. So let me get to the final thought. So yeah, this is just another Euro game. It has some complexity, it has depth. It's very procedural. As you can see, you take a die, move an architect, you do the actions, you move the follower worker to that architect's place, then you wait till next turn. The premise of this one is that you need to create a kind of like a chain reaction of those different spaces you go to in order to collect the right resources. So you don't have to, let's say you're going to be able to get some gold, but you don't want to spend gold that freely, because it's not that, it's still quite like the gold is something that will help you during the tough situations. It's something like that. The wild resource, the gold is powerful. So you want to keep the gold to those tough situations. Yeah, you can get those crate tokens, but then you basically, they are not, so at first they are an extra resource. When you get them, they are refreshed, but once you use them once, if you want to refresh them now, they need to be replenished by giving away another resource. So it becomes more like a resource exchange and not an extra resource every turn. I would have preferred there would be some other means of refreshing those crates, because, for example, refreshing a crate with a gold is a stupid idea because the gold is wild. So why not just use gold? With the iconography, yeah, it's not that hard. There are some ships that you need to, the ship special abilities that you need to refer to in order to understand them. It's nothing supernatural. You will understand that. There's moving on the track. There's multiplying the different points, building your buildings, very territorial. But on the other hand, it's rather free roaming, because you will be so for example, if you start building the project, then somebody else, if they want to build the same color of a project, they have to extend the project you started, basically. Yeah, it's a common thing until somebody builds. So at some point it feels like I don't have any other resources, I want to build a building. So but if I put this project down, I will basically give opportunity for that player to now build a size 3 building. So should I do that? Should I do that? It doesn't feel beneficial to build the same color where there is already somebody else doing that stuff. Yeah, one thing is when somebody builds a building and you had your influence marker on one of the project tiles, you will move up on that track, which basically gives you maybe some bonuses and gives you opportunity to score more points for your other buildings. But at the same time, it's not huge in my opinion, because the levels here is you get 1 point, 1 point, 2 point, 2 point, 2 point, 3 point, 3 points. It's the multipliers are not that great. The scorings are not into, let's say, 300s or something like that. And you get points from those various means. You just sometimes get points. There is what I want to say is that there is an interaction, but it feels like kind of like a forced interaction. And you're rather doing your own thing and trying to just build your buildings and put the gardens next to them, and it seems like the others building around you. Sometimes, you can block with if it's a very tight spot and everybody's building on the same spot. In a 2-player game, it's not that beneficial. But if it's maybe a 4-player game, then you maybe somebody will put a new color project next to this project and basically kind of block the spot or something like that. There might be that thing, but this kind of interaction is not interesting in my opinion. It's very procedural. With 2 players, I think, or with less players, I think. So the board is double-sided. So you have a board for 1 to 2 players, and then for 3 to 4 players. And the thing is that number of spaces can change, something like that, but the number of districts doesn't change. So do you play with 2 players, or do you play with 4 players? With 4 players, there will be much more of that forced interaction. With 2 players, there will be less of that interaction. You will be more like you're in this corner, you're in this corner. Of course, it depends on your strategy, it depends on what resources you need, and you always need those bonuses to keep your engine going, to get this chain reaction of just going with your architect. Now I need to go here, now I need to go here. Of course, it depends on the dice as well. So if you don't have a particular die of that particular number, then you just cannot go there. The more people go into that spot, the less dice there are. And then if there is no dice, the scoring happens, the dice come back, but maybe you didn't want the scoring to happen right now. You wanted the scoring to happen after you have done at least one more action. It doesn't... It works. I think it's a well-oiled machine, but a rather boring well-oiled machine. I would have loved to have maybe a little more free roam, maybe a traditional worker placement instead of moving with the architects. It's fine, it's cool. And this procedural thing of picking up a die or something like that, maybe some more traditional resources. Maybe not. I don't know. It doesn't stand out of a plethora of other great. If I would call it a worker placement, it's worker movement game, but kind of like a worker placement game. It has this cool mechanism. If you take a die, it becomes a resource. Yeah, but it doesn't stand out of other such maybe heavier Euro games that I have for example, in my collection. For example, if I have Underwater Cities, or even if I take Anachrony, something like that. I feel there's much more freedom. I feel that there is, of course, more theme. This is a themeless game, and there's much more opportunities to maybe make a mistake, but then come back. Here, you must follow this instruction. You must follow this procedure in order to play well. And if you go to the wrong spot, you will be short of a resource. At the end, you feel like you can kind of be stuck in the end. You can kind of be like, oh, I don't have enough to do this final turn, good turn. It feels like, for example, I had this last turn when I was like, okay, I cannot really do anything because I didn't plan that much ahead. I'm not a strategy gamer. I'm more of a tactical gamer, so maybe it's just not for me. So yeah, Tabannusi is not a bad game, not for my taste. And yeah, I gave it around 7 out of 10. It's a fine game, but it's not something that you need to rush and buy. You can definitely skip it and buy another game, but maybe this idea of moving architects and dice and getting those bonuses and creating those kind of not the chain reactions, but having this procedural thing, maybe it's for you. So yeah, that's Tabannusi. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you another time. Bye bye.